This video is brought to you by Brilliant. On Sunday, Slovakia's government collapsed, unleashing more chaos in the already unstable political landscape. President Zuzana Čaputová is now expected to appoint the first technocratic government in Slovak history, to serve until an early election on the 30th of September, while the country braces for a divisive political campaign between liberal pro-Western forces and nationalist pro-Russian forces. So in this video, we're going to look at how Slovakia got into this ongoing crisis, why pro-Russian parties are currently way ahead in the polls, and whether this means that Slovakia could end up as the new black sheep of Europe. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. To understand how we got here, we need some context. Slovakian politics used to be dominated by Robert Fico, who served as Prime Minister between 2006 to 2010 and from 2012 to 2018. Fico is an ex-communist and founder of the Social Democratic SMER party, which is economically left-wing but also holds socially conservative and nationalist views. Fico faced many accusations of corruption, but what really shook his government up was the assassination of investigative journalist Jan Kuciak and his girlfriend by the Slovak mafia. Kuciak had accused Fico and his SMER of having ties to the mafia, which created a general suspicion that Fico had something to do with his murder. This sparked massive protests, which successfully pressured Fico to step down and leave the government in the hands of Vice Premier Peter Pellegrini. Although the government survived, anti-SMER sentiment became so strong that it gave rise to populist firebrand Igor Matovic, leader of the Ordinary People and Independent Personalities movement, or OLANO for short. Matovic was known as a provocateur who was popular for his publicity stunts, which took shots at corrupt politicians. In the 2020 parliamentary elections, his aggressive rhetoric captured the voter sentiment and saw him surge to first place with 25% of the vote, while Pellegrini-led SMER received only 18%. Matovic formed a broad right-wing government with smaller liberal and conservative parties, and commanded a constitutional majority as a result. Pellegrini, meanwhile, left SMER and founded HLAS, which is meant to be a more moderate catch-all version of Fico's party. It soon became apparent that Matovic was a much better showman than a politician, often sparking feuds with his coalition partners. After a year of arguing with Minister Richard Sulik from the Liberal SAS party over COVID measures, OLANO fell by 15 points in the polls. When Matovic tried to secure Sputnik COVID vaccines, Sulik threatened to pull support. To keep the coalition intact, Matovic stepped down as Prime Minister and switched roles with his Finance Minister Eduard Heger. However, Matovic kept sabotaging the government, constantly sparking feuds with his coalition partners. This culminated into another political crisis in December last year, with the Liberal SAS party leaving government, when Matovic reneged on his promise to step down as Finance Minister and literally retracted his resignation letter right after having signed it. As a result, the government lost a confidence vote and Heger resigned as Prime Minister, only to be reappointed by President Čaputová to serve until an early election in September 2023. Heger, meanwhile, left OLANO, kicked Matovic out of government and took on the finance ministry himself. Unsurprisingly, this ad hoc government was beset by chaos and infighting, and in March, the Minister of Healthcare resigned due to incompetence. They stumbled on for a bit until last week, when both the Foreign Minister resigned and the Agricultural Minister resigned, after it was revealed that his company had received state subsidies. Heger himself finally decided to go on Sunday, bringing the government down and leaving the president to appoint a technocratic government led by Vice Governor of Slovakia's central bank, Ľudovít Odor. Odor is due to hold office until Slovakia's upcoming elections, which are due for September the 30th. So what happens next? Well, unsurprisingly, all this chaos is a golden opportunity for Robert Fico and his SMER party, who were already polling ahead of Pellegrini's HLAS before the crisis. A Fico victory would be bad news, at least from the EU's perspective, because he's remarkably pro-Russian and anti-Ukraine. FICO has said he would end arms deliveries to Ukraine, veto any new EU sanctions and Ukraine's accession to NATO, and claimed that Ukrainian fascists started the war in Ukraine in 2014. Now, because SMER are still polling at less than 20%, and Slovakia uses a proportional representation electoral system, FICO won't be able to get a majority by himself. However, he has a natural ally in the Republic movement, which splintered from the neo-fascist Slovak People's Party, and is polling at around 8% of the vote, who are also pro-Russian. If you don't live in Slovakia, the success of these pro-Russian parties might seem a bit odd, given how most generally anti-Russian the rest of Europe is. But the Slovak public are actually the most pro-Russian in the EU. According to polling from September last year, over half of the population wants Russia to win the war, with only about 30% rooting for Ukraine and the remaining 20% saying they don't know. Even before the war, in 2021, a different poll recorded 56% of Slovaks agreeing with the notion that NATO is provoking Russia. Unsurprisingly, Slovaks therefore generally oppose sanctions on Russia. According to the latest Eurobarometer polling, 44% of Slovaks disagree with sanctions, the highest figure in the EU. So, is Slovakia destined to elect a pro-Kremlin government led by FICO? In short, no, it isn't. At least not yet. Progressive Slovakia, a social liberal party co-founded by President Čaputová, has also seen a steady rise to third place in the polls. Since the party was excluded from the government coalition at the last election, it's not associated with the recent chaos, and also benefits from the fact that Čaputová remains the most trusted figure in Slovak politics. It's also worth mentioning that, for a functioning majority, FICO would probably need the support of a third party, like the conservative We Are Family movement or the Christian Democrats, both of which vocally support Ukraine. However, the constant bickering among pro-Western and pro-Ukraine politicians doesn't bode well for them. SAS and the Progressives have ruled out working with Matovic, and they're not too eager to work with Hager's New Democrats party either. The emergence of a whole load of pro-Western parties like the Blues and Apple is also worrying, because chances are they'll split the pro-Western vote while failing to reach the 5% threshold. All in all, it's hard to predict how things will pan out 5 months before the election, but as things stand, Slovakia's pro-Russian bloc has the upper hand. What do the world's best politicians have in common? They're willing to learn something new every day. And if you think that sounds too hard or too time-consuming, or even just too overwhelming for you to do, then you haven't tried Brilliant.org. Brilliant.org is the best way to learn maths and computer science in a fun and interactive way. That's because Brilliant has literally thousands of lessons, from foundational and advanced maths to skills crucial in the modern world, like AI, data science, neural networks, and more, with new lessons added monthly. Like I said though, the real value here is that you can do this easily every day, truly committing to lifelong learning. Slowly, over time, you'll not only pick up new skills or get better at maths, but you'll also feel the satisfaction that comes with bettering yourself and staying ahead. To try everything Brilliant has to offer, free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description. Plus, the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription.